Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kirsten and this is Small Bobbins. And today we're talking about hook and eye closures. So exciting. The funny thing is, when I first started Small Bobbins, which is my web shop for everything you need to sew your own lingerie, I didn't even offer sewing kits because I figured that people would be really particular about how exactly they wanted to make their own bras and bralettes, and that they would want to pick and choose their own products and put them together themselves. I was very wrong about that. When I finally started putting together the sewing kits myself, so, a pack that would have everything you need for a single bra or a bra and panty set, for example. And so when I started putting together these kits, usually they would be based on like an actual piece of lingerie that I made. So then I could say, like, here's the bra that I made and here are the exact materials that I used to make it. So, for instance, this one, it would have like the lace, the elastics, blah, blah, blah. And then people would message me and they would say, like, great, I love it, except for one thing. Like, I would buy this kit, except I want one thing to be different in there. And it was usually just like, I want different colored rings and sliders, or I would use a different width of strap elastic. But quite often it was the size of the hook and eye closure. Now, as a little side note, I did create a free ebook to try to address this for people who like a bra kit or any sort of sewing kit that I sell in my shop, but they just wanted to change one thing. Technically, I sell every piece separately, and so you could just kind of take the list of stuff that's in the kit and kind of pick and choose what you want, on your own. But I would still get messages from people who said, like, but then I'm worried that I'm gonna forget something. And there's so many little components that go into making a bra that I guess I can understand that, especially if you're placing a big order or if it's getting shipped far away. You don't want to get all your stuff and then realize, like, dang it, I forgot 4mm elastic, soft elastic, underband elastic, channeling. You get the point. And so I made a little ebook. It's totally free. You just have to give me your email address. And it goes through essentially like, what is my formula for putting together a bra kit? Like, does it have a main fabric, a lining fabric, power net? And it gives you a checklist so that if you want to kind of design your own bra kit, then this is the checklist you would use for that. It also mentions things like what sort of properties you should be looking for in like a lining fabric versus a main fabric versus an underband elastic, what quantities you might need of each thing, and tips for like buying certain things or swaps that you can make if you're not able to find a certain thing. So I've included a link to that down in the description, and so you can get that for free. Or if you don't want to give me your email address, then it is €1. So anyway, I didn't have kits to start because I wanted people to kind of choose every single piece themselves. They didn't like that. Then I started making kits and people wanted to be able to make little decisions themselves. I can't make every single material in a bra kit customizable because then we're just kind of coming around full circle where you're making all the decisions yourself. But I did start making the hook and eye closures. Like, you can choose which one you want. But if you're new to bra making, you might look at that and be like, well, I don't know which one I want. So that's what this video is about. Like, how can you figure out what size hook and eye closure you should buy? I would say pretty much the starting point for buying any lingerie making supplies is if you're starting with a pattern, the pattern should say what materials to use. And in this case, like, what size hook and eye closure you should get. My advice is to not get too hung up on the exact width of the hook and eye. Just look for like how many like rows and columns that it has. You can adjust from there. Like, you can make changes to your pattern to kind of fit the hook and eye closure that you have. Like, if your pattern says to buy a 40mm hook and eye closure and you see that in my shop I mostly have like 38mm, that's 2mm difference. Like, who cares? It's the same. Even if you're adding or removing like an entire row of hooks, that's still not too hard to account for. Like, with some simple pattern changes, it's really not going to affect the fit and the look of the final bra too much. So I would say, like, up or down, like one row is fine. If you don't have a pattern in mind yet and you just want to buy a kit and you're not sure which size closure to stock up on, I would say the first place to look is in your own lingerie drawer. This is really like my best advice for anybody who's getting into sewing lingerie is like look in your lingerie drawer and like critically examine the stuff that you're already wearing. I feel like often people will get into lingerie sewing and they start like over analyzing like the kits and the materials and the patterns without really analyzing the stuff that they already own. It's like, babe, you have a whole like drawer full of samples that you can look at. Like, it reminds me, I once had somebody who bought one of my panty patterns and she emailed me and she was like, I think you missed a step because like the thing on the inside of the panties, the gusset liner, it's open on one side. I was thinking like, go look in your underwear drawer. Like that's a very normal thing for ready-to-wear panties too. So looking very thoughtfully at the lingerie that you already own will really give you a good starting point to figure out like, what is it that I like or don't like about these pieces? And it might give you a better idea of like, oh, I really like a long line bralette, which means I'm gonna need a wider hook and eye. Or it's like, oh, actually, like I have double Ds, but my favorite bra only has a one hook in the back. You'd be surprised what you find out just from kind of like looking at what you already have. Now, this video is focusing on closures, but you can really take that analytical exercise to any part of bra making. Kind of like in my last video, I talked about underwires, and I also mentioned that you should kind of look in your own lingerie drawer and using bras you already own to find your perfect underwire size. I would also say like forget about any sort of like rules to start with. You shouldn't get stuck in the mindset of like, I am a certain size, therefore I should only wear a certain type of closure. It can be true that a wider band gives more support and a wider band will require a wider hook and eye closure. But it could also be that a wider band like doesn't quite fit your body shape right. Just as a personal example, I used to wear a lot of long line bralettes, but as I've gotten older, my ribs have started to like flare out a bit, and I find that the long line is much more uncomfortable these days. So actually I need smaller bands and smaller closures. Maybe you actually prefer front closures or pull-on bralettes or sports bras, and then who cares about the hook and eye closure? So first, just look for similarities across the bras that you already own. And you can use a measuring tape, or you can even just count the number of like rows and columns on the hook and eye closures and see like, oh, actually all the ones that I own are like 3x3s or 38 millimeters or, you know, whatever else it is. You might also want to note like, are they very stretched out? Do I have to wear them on the tightest or the loosest column? If you have really narrow hooks and eyes, like when you wear that bra, do you feel like it's flimsy or do you feel unsupported? For a wider band and like wider closures, does it feel like it kind of rolls or gets scrunched up? These are all just little cues to help you figure out like what do you actually feel best in. You can also do some window shopping online, especially if you're getting into sewing lingerie to solve a particular problem. Like I can't easily find bras in my exact size or a specific style. Like there are companies out there that exist to make bras for your body type and your problem, but they might just be like out of your budget or like somehow not available to you. But you can still look at the bras that they're making and pick up little clues about like, okay, what is it about this bra that could be useful to me when I'm making my own bras? So like even for people with like gigantic bazongas, you might be surprised how often those bras have these little 2x3 closures in the back. And you'll start to pick up patterns between all these bras, like, you know, long line bras have a longer hook and eye closure. 3x3 and 2x2 is kind of the standard. All of this is going to kind of guide you in the right place of like what size or sizes like should you be looking at. But then there's still the realities of like, what if the size you want is not available in the color that you want? For me, that's a big thing because I mostly buy dead stock materials and I can't always find matching colors and everything. Especially hook and eye closures, I can't usually get like a full size range. And then it's also really expensive to get custom colored hook and eye closures, and I don't actually sell that many. So I get a lot of emails from people who are like, why don't you offer this color in this size? And it's like, because it's really expensive and it's hard. So I do tend to stick to the most like popular sizes. I do get kind of a bunch of emails from people who are like, why don't you have closures for bigger breasts? And I do. Nobody buys them. I actually have quite a lot of colors in really wide hook and eye closures, and nobody buys them. So until people buy them, I'm not going to buy even more colors. But if you come at me saying that I don't sell big hook and eye closures, I'm going to show you all the big hook and eye closures that I have. Just a small aside. And then it's also, it was a long tangent, but 2, the color and size combo that you like might not actually fit the pattern that you want to use. So then you have to make changes to the pattern to fit the hook and eye closure that you want to use. So for the first one, if you can't find the size you want in the color that you want, you basically just have to make a decision. Either you buy the color you want in the size you don't want, or you buy the size you want in the color you don't want. You can also try dyeing it. I never dye my lingerie materials. It's just not something I'm into. For the second one, it actually only takes like the teeniest bit of pattern hacking to get a different sized hook and eye closure to fit with the pattern you want to use. But I cannot stress this enough. You must check on this before you cut any fabric. So get your back wing piece where the hook and eye closure will be attached, and get your hook and eye closure. All you have to do is hold them up and see if it fits. You do have to take into account the elastics that you would be using to finish the edges of the bra. What elastic will go on the underband and how wide is it? And what are you going to use to finish the top edge and how wide is that? If it's not already drawn in the seam allowances, or if it differs slightly, then you can go ahead and draw that in yourself. So in my case, I'll be using this one, which matches, so I can just take that into account. And in this case, it fits really well with my back wing. If your hook and eye closure is smaller, then all you have to do is shave off that little bit from your paper pattern piece. So you can draw that in if you want. Usually I'll just mark a line and then I'll chop that bit off there. I'm not gonna do it on this piece because I'm about to make another bra and I want to use a 38mm instead. But just take your scissors and trim along there. You still need to keep in mind any seam allowances for any elastics that you'll be using. So you don't want this part to exactly equal your hook and eye closure. And if your hook and eye is smaller, this is actually a much easier change to make, because actually you can go ahead and cut your fabric without making any changes to the paper pattern, and then just trim the fabric as much as you need right before you apply your finishing elastics. It's actually something that I always double check, even if I have the exact closure that the pattern calls for, just to correct for any cutting or sewing inaccuracies I might have had. So this is the same pattern piece that I just showed you, and actually when I check it now, I didn't cut so accurately, and with the seam allowances, there is actually like a slight couple millimeter difference there. And so that's something that I can very easily trim off in the moment. I'm just gonna make a little snip there and then just kind of follow the curve on up. And this is a very small amount, so I'm gonna taper off into nothing. And this is what I would do before applying the elastic to finish this edge here. So then after, I would finish the edge with more elastic, and then I would be able to slip the hook and eye on there and have a nice even match from the wing to the hook and eye closure. If you want to use a hook and eye closure that is bigger than your pattern piece, I mean, you can see it mostly matches, but you have to remember that we will not have this amount available to us once we apply the elastic. It's gonna be way too big and it looks a bit weird. And this is a change that you must make before you cut your fabric, otherwise it's going to look really wonky. And essentially you just need to grab some scrap paper, not much you need to do. If you have a French curve or some sort of like curve so that you can get a similar shape, you can use that. Make sure you're keeping track of the seam allowance. So I'm starting down here because that's going to be flipped up when we're sewing. Gonna mark like right here. And you can kind of go back in there and edit as you please. And then so this is the piece that I would cut out and add to my pattern piece before I cut out my fabric. Two very common shapes for the back wing are the camisole back, which is kind of just angled from the side seam to the hook and eye closure, or the leotard back, which forms more of a U shape from the back strap attachment down to the hook and eye closure. And so depending on the shape of the back wing, you can decide how you want to make the change so that there's a nice smooth transition. It is going to really depend specifically on the pattern you're using and the closure you're using. Technically you can do whatever you want, but you might have trouble editing the back of a delicate, more narrow band bra to have a wider hook and eye, or a wider U-shaped band to have a very narrow hook and eye closure. In this case, with this pattern piece, it is designed for a more narrow one, and so to add the wider hook and eye, you end up making some more extreme changes to the pattern piece, and you might lose those more delicate curves that are so nice about the pattern in the first place. And then for something with a leotard back, you'll have to scoop it down to a more extreme U shape. It just kind of depends on how you feel about the end result and what materials you have available to you. So I hope you found this video useful for familiarizing yourself with all there is to know about hook and eye closures. And remember, don't ask me what your personal preference should be, because I don't know you. As always, you can find kits and materials and sewing patterns and everything you need to create your own beautiful lingerie at smallbobbins.com. Thanks for watching. Bye!